I'm Mark Indelicato. This is Gary Menees. He's our Director of Sales here at RCN. How are you doing today, Gary?
I'm doing fantastic for a Thursday, I believe it is today.
Yeah, this is one of those weeks where you just kind of lose track of which day's which.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a good Thursday.
It has been.
Cool. So we're going to be getting into, like we just said, pots today. We're going to start with why you should cut the copper. After that, we're going to be talking about the pots over LTE kit. Lastly, we're going to talk about generating a positive ROI. I would imagine one of the biggest reasons you guys are all here. So we're going to wrap up with a Q&A session today. Be sure to stick around afterwards. All attendees will be offered a free one-on-one consultation valued at $150 at the end of this webinar. Attendees, there we go. That's the word. I think my brain was losing the D at the end of there. Yeah, if you guys have any questions too at that Q&A time, that's when you'd want to ask them. There's a little Q&A section on the sidebar there. You can drop any questions you have in there, and we'll get them for you. So without further ado, we'll jump into our first poll here, and then we'll begin. Let's see how to generate. Let's see. Are you familiar with any POTS replacement solutions? This is one that I'm actually really curious about. I see ours all the time, obviously, and I've seen a couple other ones, but I'm curious if you guys have as well. Let's see, one or two different. Let's see, I know a couple other people jumped in here as well. Oh yeah, we got a good list going now. Let's see. Okay, yeah, so everyone's familiar with at least a couple of different POTS solutions. Cool. So while you guys are filling that out, we'll go ahead and get cracking. Gary, you wanting to? I'll kind of pass this over to you a little bit.
I'm good. I can see that. That's great. So why you should cut the copper is a great subject line here. Basically, it's to reduce expenses, reduce this field checks that takes place, but most importantly, is because the FCC has basically mandated to sunset these analog lines. And so today, the reason why you should cut the copper sooner than later is the clock's ticking. Mm-hmm. And now would be the time to get ahead of this. As the solutions are here today, it's in a position today that they're readily available. There's not a crunch on a lot of people trying to get it done by a certain deadline. Mm-hmm. And so you're able to make these plans now and time this out to where you're able to get it done now. And when other people are racing to get it in, they'll lose the ability to do certain things because that copper will go away.
Right.
They had a chance to get it done previously, converted to digital, but they haven't done it.
Right.
So I think, why should you do it? It's going to go away is the main reason.
Yeah.
And there's some other benefits to it. So I think the first one is we talk about when we look at reduced expenses. Mm-hmm. And if you just look at, the poll we talked about on the LinkedIn, this is what people are paying today. So
yeah, this is real people here. We, like you said, we asked it on our LinkedIn page. So this is potentially you guys might have even voted in this. But what are you seeing here, Gary?
Well, I think what jumps out obviously is $50 to $100 per month for what people are paying for Pastline today.
Right.
That's an incredible amount of money for Pastline.
Mm-hmm.
If you're paying less than $50, the motivation to move maybe is a little bit less.
Right.
But if you're in that 50 to 100 and plus that you're paying for Pastline today, there's really no reason to not move faster. You're going to have to change, but you're going to get immediate operating expense reduction by doing Pastline replacement today. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. One thing I think is really interesting too is I really wasn't expecting to get a whole lot of answers in that 100 to 150 and the 150 plus range. I want to say it boiled down to like 7 or 8 votes for each of those, which was kind of crazy to me because, we see how many are in that 50 to 100 range now. And as we get closer to that deadline, I know those prices are going to start spiking. And anyone who's in that 50 to 100 range now has the potential to, get bumped up to those next higher ranges. So it's definitely something, even outside of the FCC, something to keep an eye on.
Well, if you're paying $50 a month today for a Pastline, there's really no reason why you shouldn't make the change now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Let's see, let's switch on to our next one here. Field checks. All right.
So part of the challenge with POTS lines today is knowing whether they're up and running. Mm-hmm. And we hear this today in this space is dead tone. And when you come into your analog network, which is sitting on a wall, there's a lot of copper wire on those 66 blocks today. And what's interesting is a lot of them are dead tone. They're not even being used today. Mm-hmm. And so understanding what are active and what's not supposed to be dead is kind of a crapshoot. Yeah, you got to have someone come out and do a field check, mm-hmm. right? That's expensive because that's a truck roll for most of these companies coming mm-hmm. out. The traditional CLEX and companies that produce or provide Pastline or support Pastline, there's really little incentive for them to do it, and so there's a heavy price to pay to do that. Right. The other part about Pastline today is there's fewer and fewer companies supporting it, mm-hmm. and so you've got two different things. You've got no visibility to know whether your Pastline is working today unless something happens. Meaning that if you're in an elevator mm-hmm. and the elevator breaks for whatever reason, and I saw an interesting article the other day on the elevator, a news story, there was flash flooding. I don't know if you saw this, but the elevator hit the first floor, and as soon as it hit the first floar, water came up into the elevator. No. And there were 3 people in the elevator who had to get out. Yeah. And so they wouldn't know if that call button was going to work until they pushed it. Yeah, could you imagine? And I mean, it was kind of a life or death situation. Yeah. That one's a very unique situation of flash flooding. And next thing you know, they were in neck high water mm-hmm. in the elevator. Jeez. So if you see video of that, it's I'll pretty interesting video. But anyways, my point is this: you don't want to be in that situation in neck high water to know that your call button, your elevator call box no longer works, right? Because that analog line has been dead and you haven't known that. And so mm-hmm. moving that to a digital line, you'll know that that line's working because you'll have visibility. Mm-hmm. So that's part of what you're seeing today from a field check standpoint is people, you have these call boxes, you have these alarm boxes, people have to go and check them once a month, once a quarter, periodically just to make sure that they still work. Yeah. Switching to digital, coming over to a Pastline replacement solution, you're going to get visibility. You're going to be able to see that it's up, that it's working, that it's ready to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That elevator one's definitely going to stick with me because I'd had the thought before. I mean, even just being on an elevator and it goes down and then you try to call out and you can't would be horrifying enough. Yeah. But water rising up adds a whole new level to that fear that I now have. So thank you. Yes. So go see that video. Yeah. Cool. All right. And then we talked about it earlier. The most important piece that's going on is FCC is sunsetting these analog lines. So you got under a year now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last time I checked, there were 365 days in a year. Yep. And we've missed 10 of them already. So we are 355 days away. Yeah. From this, all these analog lines going sunset and not having any more support. So if you've been looking at it, if you've been thinking about it, now would be the time to really get serious about Pastline replacement. It's a very simple process. It's very easy for us to come in and analyze what you have, what that cost structure is going to look like, and how we're going to save you money. Yeah, absolutely. That takes us to the solution, doesn't it? Yes, it does. So we'll talk a little bit about the architecture of it, some of the use cases, and then what we talked earlier about visibility and support. So if we look at the architecture, something that's interesting about this that I'm learning as I'm engaging more and more customers is fewer customers actually know what a 66 block is. I actually just learned about it the other day. Yes. Yeah. I can't tell you how many deployments I've been in lately, and if they don't have gray hair like me, they have no clue what a 66 block is. Mm-hmm. And basically the 66 block is really a block that has twisted wire or wires coming to it. Mm-hmm. And what they did is they punched these wires to this board. And this board sits in a closet somewhere that people don't honestly know where it's at. Yeah. And the reason why it's called, why it's called a 66 block? Why is that? Because Westinghouse, who invented the block, that was their part number for it. Really? 66 block. Okay. And since then, it's stuck as an industry term. because there's not 66 pins on there. That's what you would
Right,
thought
yeah.
it would be, but no, it's because that's what that was the part number for
Oh,
Westinghouse.
So
So
glad I didn't make that guess then.
so anyway, you look at the architecture. What we're doing is we take everything that's connected from the building, let's say inside the building,
Right.
up to the 66 block. And then what happens traditionally is then the analog lines are coming from outside the building and they get connected to that 66 block, right? And that's how you make the connection. So when you have these different devices, the elevator boxes, call boxes, fax machines, they're all coming from underneath, let's call it underneath, to the 66 block.
Right.
And then the outside lines are coming from above. What we do is all we're doing is taking the analog lines here that are being sunsetted, no longer supported, and putting a digital LTE box right there. And we take all these devices that are coming in underneath and just repurpose them into the box itself.
Right.
Okay. So basically you're taking these copper lines, you're putting an RJ11 clip on them. You take the 2 clips and you plug it into this box, and now you have that digital system that goes over the wireless network.
Yeah.
And so all we're doing is really first is changing the delivery system of these devices.
Yeah.
So previously they were on an analog line that was reliable for the most part, just got expensive, and did no visibility. Now we're able to convert that into a box that turns it digital and puts it over to an LTE network that's reliable.
Yeah.
And so why today, or why now is more interesting is, as wireless carriers have evolved, they've been putting more and more money into their network. So their network is redundant. It's much more reliable. I think we've had this conversation before.
Yeah.
Is when a carrier's network goes down, a wireless carrier, it makes the news.
Oh, yeah.
Because it rarely happens, right? When a cable company goes down, it never makes the news because it happens every day.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the reason. That's why we've now to a point on the LTE Pastline piece that it's the carrier networks are extremely reliable. They penetrate buildings from an RF standpoint.
Yep.
And we have routing capabilities today that can manage all these different devices simultaneously. And so it's just all this technology has evolved into a perfect solution now.
Yeah, I really like, or one thing I really like about this solution is how minimal it really is. You're not tearing out wires to replace them with something new. It's literally, mounted on the wall and essentially just kind of plugged in. Is what our people do. I actually went to an install. It was 30 or 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Into like some concrete room without air conditioning, and then beside the elevator, and they got it done, and that thing was singing in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's but it's a straightforward process.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's a simple process.
Right.
So, but you're not having to go and wire the building. The building's already wired.
Yeah.
Well, all you're doing is taking that last delivery system and converting it from analog to digital, and just plugging these devices that are running on these Pastline today into a different delivery system.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about use cases.
Sure. So the most common use case traditionally had been voice lines. And over the years, what's happened is voice over IP has come in and really replaced those voice lines from an analog.
Yeah.
But that left a lot of other things out there still relying on the analog line. So there are some voice lines, there's some dedicated voice lines at times you'll run into.
Yeah.
But primarily it's fax machines, elevator call boxes, alarm systems, emergency call boxes at a university or a campus.
Yeah.
Gates and door controllers still run on analog, panic buttons. The ATMs are running, a lot of them are running still on the Pastline. So there's a lot of different SCADA, out-of-band management devices, HVAC. But primarily what we're seeing today is around 3 use cases are usually elevators is probably the first.
Yeah.
Fax lines, fire alarms, and panic buttons.
Yeah.
Those are probably our biggest call use cases today. Taking a fire alarm that relies on analog and a panic button that relies on analog and converting it to digital. again, doesn't do anything to lessen the reliability. It just changes the delivery system.
Right.
And so you're still getting a very reliable LTE network. I mean, we call 911 on our handsets every day because we trust it, right? It's the same thing you're doing with this. You're basically doing the same thing. You're just using the call button that you did or the alarm system that you did previously.
Right.
All that, it stays the same. It's the delivery mechanism that changes. I think that's probably the most important thing about Pastline to understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is like we're not really changing, how the device works. We're not rewiring the device.
Right.
All we're doing is changing the way it connects to what it already connects to today. So if you have a fire alarm system and it calls a call center that's set up for fire monitoring, it's going to continue to do that today.
Right.
It's just going to do it over the cellular network versus the analog network.
Exactly.
So that's really the changes. So if you look at the use cases, you look at the architecture, then it becomes, okay, what else do I get? Right. And so now you're able to get that support, that visibility. Now you know whether those systems that are running those digital lines is up and running. You have the capacity, the capabilities, everything is up and running. So now you have full visibility. Right. And when something does go wrong, we will be here to help, notify, identify, and provide that support mechanism remotely now, as opposed to truck rolls.
Right. And it's a 24/7, 365 kind of monitoring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's excellent. So let's go ahead and get into talking about the ROI here.
Sure. So generating this positive return on investment, first of all, is it going to cost me more to do this? And the short answer is usually no.
Yeah.
Typically, we don't find it to be an increase in price. There might be a little bit of an upfront investment when it comes to the installation piece of it, but the actual operating, especially if you're in that $50 to $150 per month, you're going to see almost an immediate savings. So if you look at that, I mean, I know we talk about reliability, price breakdown, and why us. So let's talk a little bit about the reliability.
Yeah, I know you touched on this a bit earlier, but
it's redundancy, right? And that's the beauty of the LTE networks today for the wireless carriers. It's very redundant.
Right.
Again, if their network goes down, it makes news. And so that's how highly reliable that is.
Yeah.
You don't have, the other thing about analog lines is they either sit on poles or sit in the ground today. A lot of construction going on. The U.S. just is about to pass another huge infrastructure bill. So we know that there's going to be more construction going on. And, things like that happen. Cable gets cut, lines get cut.
What just happened locally, like a week ago, I think? 1.5 counties surrounding us lost, can't remember if it was Spectrum or Xfinity, but one or the other, and they were out for like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 days.
Yeah. And I think the thing that's interesting is, yes, we're converting this. Copper's always on. Well, this device is on. Even if it loses power, it has battery backup.
Right.
And the battery's there to last for a while. It will continue to provide power to that device. So, it's kind of have consistent power, which is what our solution has. It doesn't rely on one power source or another. It relies on two. And so, that gives it an extra reliability. And again, we're working it on the cellular network, which allows us that higher reliability as well.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's talk about the cost of it. And that part of it. So, we have this price breakdown, but, it's a little bit misleading in that. So if you look at $52 a month, you're like, well, Gary, I'm only paying $50. I'm not saving anything.
Yeah.
But you're paying $50 per line. So in this scenario here, we're looking at more than likely one or most POTS situations have at least 2 lines.
At least, yeah.
And so if you look at how these things break down, and the reality is it breaks down to about 20, say at the low side, $22, $23.
Okay.
To the high side of about $28, $29 per line.
Right.
With our solution. That includes hardware. That includes everything you need to replace it.
Right.
And the only other investment in there is the installation. So there might be a one-time installation fee.
Right.
To do some of that. And the reason why we charge for installation is Mostly, like when I said earlier about the 66 block,
Mhm.
not only do most people don't know what they are or
Yeah.
where they are,
Mhm.
but they've never been labeled since the 70s or
Yeah.
80s. And I'm not being facetious,
Mhm.
I'm being literal here.
Yeah.
And so, you go into these rooms and, you're spending half your time toning out or toning down a lot of these lines and then finding which ones are actually working.
Right.
And so what you may find is you actually save a lot more money because you're probably being charged for some of these lines that you don't, the company doesn't know they're down.
Mhm.
You're not using them anymore.
Yep.
They think you have 10 lines. You really only have 4,
Right.
and you're paying for 10.
Mhm.
And so that's what, that's an immediate savings. Plus on top of that, if you go from $50 per line down to 28 to $24, almost half the price, you're
Right.
getting immediate savings there
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
So when we look at the price breakdown and we have it at $52, you really have to look at each individual situation and how many POTS line we're replacing.
Mhm.
And there's a formula for that. And really, just give us a call. We can walk you through this. But I can assure you, in most cases, if you're paying anywhere around $40 to $50, you're going to have an immediate savings.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as we saw, there's definitely people paying more than that as well.
Yeah.
So let's say they want to do this. Why should they go with RCN?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we've been successful in the Pastline replacement piece is it really piggybacks on a lot of our other solutions today. Right? We're building on the experiences that we have doing failover, doing fixed wireless,
Mhm.
doing other services because we're a 5G LTE enablement company or enablement specialists.
Mhm.
This is just another extension of what we do.
Right.
Okay, so Pastline is not unique to us because it is an LTE enablement solution.
Mhm.
So it fits really well in our wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And so having that capability, proven capability over the years, allows us to take a solution like this and really come in, understand what it takes to be successful at it, not only for us,
Mhm.
but for the customer itself. I mean, we believe staying connected is everything.
Mhm.
This is just another extension of staying connected.
Yep.
Right. Our guarantee is the right solution every time.
Mhm.
We believe we've produced the right solution because it has carrier certified equipment, UL listed equipment. It has SIP on an enterprise grade SIP system. It has backup battery. It's been well designed, well put together, and really ready to meet this challenge of analog replacement. So it is the right solution today. That based with our proven process of sales of how we're going to come in, we're going to connect with you. We'll define the solution. And what we mean by that in this particular case is we want to know how many POTS line are you supporting today?
Mhm.
What's running on those POTS line?
Right.
Where's the demarc? And when we say use the word demarc, we want to know in that scenario we talked about where the 66 block is.
Mhm.
So the parts that we want to find out is the stuff that's coming out underneath. We want to know what it's connected to, the hardware, right? But also we want to know what's coming, where is this coming in? This is where we call the demarc system.
Okay.
The lines that are coming in.
Mhm.
Because what we want to do is take our solution and put it right there.
Yeah.
And we want to know how many of these 66 blocks there are,
Mhm.
and then how much is coming in. So that helps us to define the solution. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then after that, we come in, we design the solution. We have flexibility in our approach.
Mhm.
We can do this as a 2-line, 4-line, 8-line, 16-line.
Right.
And so, we're going to come in with the right. If you have 3 lines, we're going to come in with a 4-line solution. If you have 2 lines, we're not going to come in with a 4-line. We'll come in with a 2-line. Right. So we want to make sure that we will bring in the right solution each time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. We'll switch over to Q&A section. I know we had a couple come through here, so let me see what the first one is. Can the POTS over LTE solution use any carrier, or is it limited?
No, it can use any carrier. It's carrier independent.
Okay.
So, we will typically look at the location and heat map the location.
Okay.
And find out who has the best coverage, and that will be our recommendation.
Okay.
But if you have, the type of calls, the type of things that are going over analog today are not high data usage.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times, any carrier will suffice.
Right.
So, you don't really have to worry about coverage most of the time. But if it becomes an issue, any carrier can work.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Let's see. How long does it take to install, and how involved is the process? I know we touched on this earlier.
So the actual installation is probably 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, that's about what it was.
But it's the prep work before then, right? It's understanding where the 66 block is. It's understanding how many lines, if they're labeled, do we know what's actually coming up into them?
Right.
That's usually the longest part, and that's usually done under a site survey.
Okay.
And we understand many customers probably don't know where their 66 block is located. They probably understand it's not labeled.
Right.
Now, a lot of times it doesn't matter if it's labeled because the wires have been cut. And so we assume those are dead.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a bad assumption, but that's kind of where we start.
Yeah.
So we look at the ones that are still on there and we'll tone those to make sure that there is some type of device on there. And we work. So the whole process probably takes, a half a day. The actual install of the hardware is about an hour.
Okay. Awesome. Oh, that's great. And let's see here. Do you have any limitations to installation, state restrictions, licensing, anything like that?
Yeah, I think each local municipality, each state has its own laws, codes, whatever you might call it, right? What we believe today is we fall into most states' codes. There's a piece in the alarm system code that says that you can actually replace analog with an LTE cellular device.
Okay.
And that's, again, what we do.
Right.
It doesn't have to be certified in order for it to do what it does. We do use certified carrier products. And as long as the device makes the phone call like it normally would, and that's what it's designed to do, then we're within code as we see it today.
Yeah.
Are there going to be those rare cases when we run into some interesting locale that has a very unique code? There's potential for that. We'll work with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great place to make your free one-on-one consultation, right?
Sure.
Let us know where you're at, and you can kind of get an idea of what else is going to be involved in that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So those are the only questions that we had come through.
Okay.
You guys have probably like maybe 2 to 3 more minutes if you have any other questions. But with that being said, we'll move on to our screen one more time for you guys, just so you can go there and get those assets. But with this, we've reached the end of the presentation. Before we end the session, I want to let you guys know our next webinar is going to be August 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be covering what 5G is bringing to disaster recovery and last mile connectivity. So it's a pretty exciting one. But outside of that, Gary, do you have anything else you want to add before we go?
Quit procrastinating.
Yeah.
The sunset is coming.
It is.
Now's the time to be thinking about it and really planning for it.
Yeah.
And really putting your budgets together and looking at when is a good time for you to execute. So
yeah,
that would be my parting words is don't wait.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate everybody's time today, and we'll see you guys on the next webinar.